I think before we begin, I think I want to, we all talked about this. We want everyone, if you have a question during the conversation, please come up and stand up, and I'll recognize and we'll try to get it. Because I want the questions to be asked in the moment. I think those are when some of the best answers are given, and then the conversation can really gravitate. So, without ado, I think everybody knows Peggy, the CEO of Yes We Can. She can. Yes, she can. We can, but she can. Then we have over here Corey Martin, Renee Ann, and we have Tim Dura. Very good. So we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves, and then we're going to get to a discussion about brand credibility, brand loyalty, and what that means. So I gave you a little bit of history about myself. I run a company called D Squared Sales. One of them is Next Gen Media, where we create educational content. I've worked with Disney. I've worked with Channel One News. I'm very big into STEM education and getting corporate sponsors to underwrite it, financial literacy, anti-bullying. These are the things that fix problems, but they fix them at the core when kids are young and not waiting till, one of the things I do sales training on is you got to fix the defect, you can't fix the outcome. So if we get to where the defect is and where we're losing, for example, young women in STEM education is in middle school. So one of the things we do is I work with marketers, I work with publishers around the world, and I actually now have been contracted by a professional agency who handles Major League Baseball and NBA and NFL players because they want to improve their brand loyalty off the field. So that's how important this is, and I think we're all ahead of the curve in recognizing what that is, because that's all the conversation that I've heard so far. So with that, I will throw it to Peggy to tell you a little bit about herself.
Okay, great. Well, I love that. Peggy Sullivan. I'm founder of She Can. You already know that. But truly, it is my passion to give every woman all the tools they need so that they can step into their power and really become a badass. And that looks different for every woman, but truly, that's what our organization is all about. And I truly invite anybody who is interested at all to go check us out at the She Can Network. I also love to speak, and all my proceeds go to my organization, She Can. So if anybody is ever looking for a speaker, please let me know. And lastly, I wrote a book, yay! My first book. It's called Happiness is Your Responsibility. And just what a great group, what a great experience. And you are all amazing. You have energized me beyond belief. So just thank you.
All right. Hi, my name's Corey Martin, and again, I'd like to echo that. It's been an honor to be here, learning so much from everybody here. But so I started my first company when I was 25, 26 years old. I just moved from New York. I moved to Los Angeles, and I really wanted to get into activations, brand recognition, brand loyalty, all those things that we're talking about today. I really wanted to kind of find myself kind of be an extension of brands. And we were fortunate enough, now I'm 42 years old, after 20 years of doing this, I've been fortunate enough to work with brands, Red Bull, Dura, Patron, the White House. We've been really lucky, and we create these kind of marketing strategies, these global marketing strategies for these brands, and then we develop the activations at the end of them for these brands. That is something I did for 20 years, and then COVID came along, as we all know. And for a long time, probably starting back when Hurricane Sandy hit my hometown back in New Jersey, back in 2013, it was the first time it really got me thinking about how climate change and us as humans, how we're really kind of affecting that and kind of putting the two together. So it really made me start thinking about how I can start making a difference. And I got involved in different charities, different NGOs, volunteering my time, doing as much as I could. But in marketing, one thing that we all do is that we're always thinking about the future. We're always thinking about the next strategy, what the trends are going to be next year, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, and we never think about the moment. Here we are in this moment right now. Nothing else exists except for this moment. And so when COVID came, it completely I would say, demolished my company. You know, we stopped everything. Nobody was going out to events. No one really cared about marketing strategy. No one really cared about what was going to happen next other than, is this going to be 3 weeks or 4 weeks? How long are we going to be in our house? And so then I started thinking about what really energizes me, what really am I passionate about? And that's when, you know, we developed a company called United for Humanity. And now that's what my focus has been, and now we are developing a platform for all NGOs. Doesn't matter what kind of NGO you are, environmental, women's rights, minority rights, it doesn't matter. We are developing a platform for all NGOs, and we are going to be the marketing arm for all of them and bringing in additional revenue streams so they can then continue, you know, their missions and be able to accomplish their goals. And then we also are able to give them the analytics that they are now looking for. And so that is now my passion and where I'm moving forward to. But yeah, any kind of questions with NGOs or anything like that, brand recognition, I'm here.
Rayanne?
Hi, I'm Rayanne Meyer-Joyner. I work for MCA Russell Johns, which is kind of a merging of two companies, My Classified Ads, which specializes in immigration advertising and legal advertising, and then Russell Johns, a publisher representative that My Classified Ads acquired in 2014 that represents publishers like USA Today, National Enquirer, and American Dental. I mostly do content writing, but what's interesting with me is I started out as just an English major, and then I had to transition and learn all of this IT stuff and all of this website stuff and all of this online writing. So it's super exciting to be sitting next to people that are so passionate about things that I'm interested in. And it was kind of something that fell into my lap. And so I really feel a responsibility to kind of pass that along, because content writing isn't something that's taught in colleges yet. I know this because I have a friend who's a college professor, and it can be very frustrating to have an insight into some things that lots of people could benefit from having. So this is really exciting.
Awesome. Mr. Tim?
Hi, good morning. My name is Tim Dura. I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Polk Institute Foundation of Social Entrepreneurship. What we do at Polk Institute is we have a relatively intensive 18-month training program where we have taken people, our emphasis is mostly on disadvantaged members of the Black and brown communities, but we service women, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. The veterans are near and dear to my heart because I retired from the Air Force a while back, and I know what military people are like, and they have the traits that they need to be what we call fundable CEOs. And we're trying to give back to these different people so that they have the capability of not only becoming a fundable CEO, but then going out, taking that seed money and hiring other people, create jobs, give back to the community. That's what the Polk Institute is all about. And this training that they get is all free. We don't charge them. We put a price tag on it at $25,000 because that's about what, if you added everything up that we put into this thing, that's about what it costs us to put one student through, but we offer it for free. And because of that, you know, we're relatively new. We're in our second year now. We've already had one class that's in what we call phase 2, which is where they're matched up with a mentor, and now they're getting everything finalized to go and give their pitches in front of a 3-member panel. Once they pass that, we put them in front of venture capitalists to get funded. Our goal is to fundraise. We need to fundraise just like every other nonprofit out there. And as you all know, the nonprofit world is exploding. There's all kinds of nonprofits coming onto the scene. They all have a passion and a mission, and trying to compete in that kind of a market is tough because, there's limited donors out there. So we're here in hopes to learn from you, in particular, what you guys are doing to, one, establish brand loyalty, because we're in the process of trying to do that, and then to, one, retain it, and two, expand it. So that's what we're about at the Polk Institute, and if you have any interest in learning more about us, please come and see me after the panel, and our CFO is sitting over there. Both of us would be glad to speak to you. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you. So, I think before we got up here, we all had a conversation, and I think unanimously agreed brand loyalty, brand credibility. It kind of takes the fact that you have to connect and you have to make people feel and give them experiences, not talk at them, and give them opportunities to empower themselves. So my question, I guess the first one goes to Peggy, is you mentioned something about storytelling. Can you talk about how that lends itself to getting that accomplished?
Yeah, let me start off with a question. How many of you were here on Wednesday? Raise your hand. How many of you remember the or the pistachio nut incident? Yeah. So that basically says people love a storytelling. In my mind, if you can tell a story that people remember, they will remember you. And if you can tell a story that leads from the heart or that represents your cause, that is something that will resonate. More importantly, be memorable. The nonprofit that I run, She Can, we tell a lot of stories. We tell stories of the women who we have changed their lives for, and they tell their stories, and all of a sudden, they help somebody, and they start to mentor somebody, and they help somebody, and it gets to be this really contagious thing. So I really believe the art of storytelling is something that's becoming more popular, but you tell a great story, people will remember you. And so for me, it's not about selling a product, but it's about selling a story that everybody in the audience can have a chuckle about, kind of embrace because they feel very heartfelt about it. And all of a sudden, they can relate to you. And when they start to relate to you, you start to build trust because they realize you're no better than them. You're just actually a lot like them. And that is a really helpful connection to make. So I say, and this sounds really crazy, but if you can sit down and write a couple of stories that tell your story and can do it in a couple of minutes and have a couple of go-to stories, and you can have those stories ready to tell whenever you want to, those are the things that will keep you memorable and get people to remember who you are and what you stand for.
Thank you. That's great. Corey, we were talking prior, and you gave me a number, staggering amount of nonprofits out there.
Yep.
And I know that your mission is to create one unified platform
Yep.
Where they can all operate much more efficiently. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so just in the United States alone, there's 1.8 million nonprofits. Worldwide, there's 10 million. But if I asked anybody here, name 15 nonprofits, they'd probably go with the big ones, the Greenpeace, the UNICEF, the Black Lives Matters, But to get down to 15, 16, 17, people would struggle with that. And that is because they are having problems marketing, right? All nonprofits, they take 20% of their budget and they have to use it for what they call overhead. That overhead has to include the cost of running the actual NGO. And within that 20%, they have a small little line item called marketing. And how are you supposed to fight against a global issue if you can't even market against it? You're marketing against governments, you're marketing against, companies, whatever. Everyone's trying to put you down. And so that's where we come in. So we're creating this, unified platform. And the way that we are going to market it, I unfortunately can't talk about that. That's next year's conference. But what we want to do is be able to unify all of them on a single platform, which isn't that unique, But what is unique is that we are going to be the marketing arm for all of these NGOs. And you talk about, you know, having a story, and what I have been doing for Red Bull for 10 years, what I've been doing for Patron for 10 years, what I've been doing for Rolls-Royce for 10 years, is creating a story. People can go buy a Rolls-Royce or they can go buy a Bentley. They can go buy a Monster or can they buy a Red Bull. But what they actually are buying is the story around that product, exactly what Peggy was saying. And so that's what we're creating. We're going to help these NGOs create the story around their NGO, so then people are more attracted to it. They'll be able to go on, they'll be able to find the solutions that they're looking for, they'll be able to find volunteer, because right now if you want to volunteer, you actually have to look up each NGO, right? If you want to go to a rally, you have to hopefully find one after you've Googled all of them and seeing what's happening this Saturday. Well, you're not going to have to do that anymore. And then you're going to be able to find the solutions to be able to actually implement into your own life. And so there's a lot of different things that, you know, we're going to be able to offer on this platform. Again, it's called United for Humanity. And it comes from a place of love and compassion, because that's what it's about. You know, we want to help them accomplish their own missions. But at the same time, you know, one hand washes the other. We're going to make this world a better place as all of them are able to accomplish their missions, and that's the goal.
That's awesome. Thank you. No problem. I think that one of the topics we were talking about is something that probably everybody in the room has experienced. You're looking at information coming in, and you can't decipher what's true, what's what. The news has now become something of opinion. Very few factual reports are given. You always have to look at the background. Even if somebody states the truth, they're challenged and it could be dissected. So getting the right information is possible. So Rainey, that's something that you brought up as very important. How does that lend itself to that credibility?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I've always been very passionate about journalism, which is funny because I've never been a writer of newspaper articles. So I find that interesting because, like, over the past few weeks, I've been thinking a lot about, like, confirmation bias and how it's more likely that when we're looking for something, we're more likely to build up arguments that support what we already think, and we're not very likely to find something that we disagree with. And that's funny because we're also living in a day and age where we have more access to information than we have ever before. And so it would be nice to see more firm steps forward so that people could, like, actively look at opinions maybe they don't agree with and be put in situations with difficult conversations versus just, like, accepting the status quo. Because in my opinion, and it's, you know, what is accepted and what is considered credible is usually when a white person says it. And that's not necessarily fair. And you can look and find that throughout all of history, from, like, the Salem witch trials or the execution of Emmett Till, you know, a young boy that was not found innocent until 70 years too late. And it's kind of disgusting that we don't have any other examples of what credibility is other than someone like me.
That is, I think everybody here can say that. That is so true. It is so prevalent right now. I'm in journalism. I ran two news channels. I was very adamant about facts, and even those well-intentioned, they always kind of started shifting over to opinion. And that is dangerous, because that means we're not getting information. And I'll go into that a little bit more. But I wanted to talk to Tim, because we're talking about nonprofits. And Tim, it comes down to it always comes down to money. Nonprofits struggle, I think we all know that. But you do something really amazing with the Polk Institute, was you raise money, you kind of help guide them and create that. So can you talk a little bit about what you do and your work with regards to the funding?
Well, like Dave said, it's it's a quagmire. Fundraising for a nonprofit, especially when you don't have a quote-unquote brand yet that has been established, it's not really what you know, but it's who you know. And I'm sure a lot of you can identify with that. The reason being, you've got to get that first big hit. You got to have that first big chunk of money come in to give you credibility. And we struggled for months with that. Our CEO is a college professor now, but he was in the banking world for quite a while. And he would go to his friends that he still had at some of the different financial institutions, and they would all just say, gee, it's really interesting, Gary. Come back and talk to us in 6 months after you've gotten somebody to believe in you. And you kept getting the door slammed in his face, going to all of his friends. Well, he finally ended up going to a friend of his. His name is Michael Lawson from the Los Angeles Urban League. And that is a very large organization for minorities in LA. I used to teach entrepreneurship in the summer there for 2 weeks for several summers to help disadvantaged kids go to national contests to win scholarships. And we were very fortunate in the fact that our region and my kids actually went, sent one each year, the 2 years that I was there. And so we had kind of a little bit more of a corporate knowledge with Gary and then myself, who had actually worked at the Urban League, and we went to them to sponsor us, and they agreed to. And with them now giving the Polk Institute some street cred, we were able to go back and talk to these different financial institutions. And we have one private donor that's been very nice to us, and say, hey, the Urban League is backing us up. They're our #1 sponsor. And the Urban League has also kicked in money to keep the Polk Institute going at this point. And so now we are getting those hits from the banks and financial institutions in the Los Angeles area. Our company is based out of Carson, California. So as that money now starts trickling in, we're getting more and more interest. So now as our brand is becoming established, we need to take that to the next step. We need to figure out how we're going to continue to outreach and get more people to come in and learn about the Polk Institute and help us out, with donations.
Question?
So I just kind of wanted to pose a scenario because I'm currently experiencing this. I'm on the board of a NFP nonprofit in San Diego and then also NGO in Kenya. We have the amazing task to produce a marathon next year. It's a very fast moving ship. We have support on the governmental level, all the makings of an amazing outcome when it comes down to marketing. So what we're finding, because we are an American-based nonprofit that has sort of the task to implement this, there's a disconnect, obviously, with local culture, local conversations. What might be your, just posing to the panel, your approach to making sure that the storytelling, the language, and just sort of the nuances to promotion local, that are speaking to the local narrative as well as like the national, global. There's so many audiences that we're attempting to market to, and I just would like to see sort of what your approach might be to that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure. Go
Can I
ahead.
ask a quick question?
Sure.
What is the nonprofit? Who does it benefit?
Yeah.
Who's behind it? Can I have a little more information?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's called My Chosen Vessels. Right now, it's recognized by the UN as the official indigenous organization for the Maasai people. That is obviously different tribes, the council, so representation from all those different tribes of the Maasai are sitting on the board as in the NGO in Kenya. So a lot of the initiatives and things that are being developed are coming from their leadership. With that being said, there's an American, office that is, obviously taking advantage of the placement here in terms of fundraising and things. So the high-level management of like this type of initiative is, Kenyan government and our nonprofit in San Diego, and not necessarily the one on the ground. And so that's just sort of the nature of how we're working on this.
Sure. You want to go first?
Well, I think you definitely have a story, and look at the people who are going to benefit from who you are trying to raise money for. And if you can amplify sort of how you're helping them, we're all humans. You touch the heart, they open their pocketbooks. And so to me, I would figure out how to get those stories, whether they're testimonials, videos, that type of thing, and how the money is actually going to be used and how it's going to be helped. And don't underestimate the power of finding one or two corporate sponsors, because if you get the right corporate sponsor, that will lift your fundraising capacity, but that will also lift your marketing capacity, because what they will do is they will start to market it. And I'm assuming that this is something that's maybe in San Diego, so maybe,
It's actually not.
Okay.
It's actually going to be right outside of, it's Ambercelli. So the run is actually taking place on the ground in Ambercelli. It's called Unity Run, if you're interested, unityrun.org. And so we put the brand together, we put all the nuts and bolts, and it's time to activate, but just sort of the operations of on ground in Kenya. It's a multi-tiered experience, and that's sort of proving. So yes, we have the collateral content piece from an American lens, and I think that's sort of where we're limited.
Yeah, sorry. Spending 20 years marketing for, big brands, the one common denominator that they all had whenever they approached us was, how do we tell their story? And people from Kenya, what you're doing, how you're benefiting them, that's a story. There's a story there that needs to touch the hearts of people. And whatever story is being told now, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but maybe there's a couple of kind of what we call heartstrings that can be pulled to really bring people on, really bring people in. I always remember that, was that PETA commercial and Sarah McLachlan is singing, and it's like every time I hear that song, I think of that. So maybe there is some sort of sensory kind of story that you can add to the story, so then every time someone sees this, smells this, hears this, they think of the people in Kenya and how they can help out, inspire them. Every study that we have been reading now, people are tired of the doom and gloom. How many poached elephants can you see? Now it's about time for inspiring people, giving people hope. And if that's what you can give them, they'll back you. They'll be right behind you.
Yeah, and I think, I just want to touch, I don't want to send it to you, but I think we all have to remember that when we go through these processes and we're trying to get these things accomplished, the people we're targeting, they're humans. They have the same issues. I'm talking to somebody on an autism campaign. Well, you know what? There are CEOs and there are big-time people, no matter what your income level is, they have the same issues as we do. And touching that point and maybe doing a little research and finding where that passion and that connection is inside your target is something that really is powerful. It takes a little research, but it's absolutely out there. And just remembering that we're all the same.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, even though data is king and most of it's already electronic, I still prefer an old-fashioned pen and paper, and we use a client relationship form that kind of details the pain points that each of our clients have. And that sounds like it might be helpful for you if you can find like ideal people that you want to work with and then expand on that. Because typically what I like to do is, because it sounds like you have several like niche areas you're trying to focus on, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have, it's a runner focused audience. The idea is that we're attempting to inspire runners to come run in Kenya, which
Okay.
I think is a bucket list, but there's, now it is, obviously the proceeds are going, I should have said this earlier, it's a water campaign. So yeah, it's a water campaign. It's, certainly has heartstrings. I think it's, but there's a chance of like biting too much from some other water campaign, and so I'm looking for,
So
Nike-
every time you have a niche, it's important to be careful, because the more niches you have, the more complicated it can be to really advertise each of them, because you know how social media has made everything, so you have to do it on all these platforms. So it's usually quite a bit more effective to take each of your niches and like really kind of drill down all of the different questions that those people might have for you so that you can address them individually. I think if you kind of build out the content on your website platform, you can draw a lot more traffic that way. And so consider different questions that your audience is going to be asking you and then answer them. And I think that would be really helpful, and it won't cost you anything but like your time.
And
Okay, you
Nike-
say you're in
Nike-
San Diego? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Nike sounds like a great sponsor. I was just going to throw that out there,
Yeah, that would-
they get
if you
behind
have a
those types of
connection, that would
projects.
be amazing.
Yeah, I would go after
Let me
Nike.
know. Yeah, absolutely.
Runner's World too, I mean, you get a nice article in Runner's World, which serves everybody, that's a gateway to hundreds of thousands of runners,
And
so.
we could tell a story in that. I see that, yeah, magazine. Thank you for that, yeah.
Okay, you're in San Diego. So knowing San Diego, it's a very diverse culture there, lots of different areas. Who's your target niche? I mean, who's your target market? What's your segment? Who are you trying to appeal to right
Yeah,
now?
absolutely. I think for San Diego specifically, it's the network of runners clubs, the casual runners that run already for different initiatives, and they have established peer groups, different things like that. So we're kind of trying to tap into that network of, semi-pro, pro runners that might be interested in bringing a team. So that was kind of the approach was, teams running on behalf of.
So what would be the fundraising aspect of your running event then? Are these runners
They
going to
can-
go out and get sponsorships to sponsor them to run? Or are
could be a
you
few
charging entry
ways.
fees? What are you doing?
Yeah, it could be done a few ways. So the individual, I guess the person that nominates their run club, it could be a fundraiser. So for every mile completed, there would be a pledge, right? So that's kind of how typical fundraising things happen. It's a pledge. So for each person, if they get, let's say, $100 per mile, and then you have 10 people in that club, if they all finish, then that's a substantial donation, but that money is coming from their network.
So the running club then would be soliciting a sponsor then to sponsor them for so much a mile as they complete
They
that.
could.
Is that what?
It could be corporate, it could be individuals, I mean, it's,
Okay. So then I would be taking a hard look at, I'm always big with, you got to know the territory. All right, I'd be taking a look at who I can target in the San Diego area that is on the corporate level, and start approaching them with your idea and see if they would become a corporate sponsor for a running club or a group of individuals or whatever to get it started. And that way you can advertise that and say, so-and-so's already in and they've pledged to contribute $5,000 if this running club competes the miles. Something like that is where I would be
So
going.
it's-
I
it's
would
almost-
really
yeah,
narrow
it's
in.
like what do you call it, a peer-to-peer, fear of missing out. So thank you for everyone's
Thank you.
contribution.
That was
you.
great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Uh-oh.
Yeah, really.
He's
Thanks.
back.
So you guys hit on a couple of really cool notions. You hit on the notion of content and credibility moving from information to opinion, right? It's been this really like lambada-like dance as more people have gained command and control over their content. From your experiences, both prior and with the clients you have now, how do you help them move from being black boxed, if that makes sense, to being more glass boxed? Because it seems now what people want and where content really resonates is when the brand feels like it's opened its doors and given you a peek behind the curtain versus before where it was really easy to lead with a closed door, mysterious thing. Would love to hear, I think you guys have enough great experiences. I'd love to hear how you help people shift
Yeah, I
from
mean,
one to the other.
it's.
Thank you.
One of the things that brands and everybody should keep in mind that when we're approaching these types of marketing situations, brands, this is good business. So I'm looking at it from their point of view. We have good intentions. Our marketing has great intentions. We have to make sure that it means something to the brands we're talking to, and their goals are not your goals. So the mistake that some make is that I'm trying to communicate on a level to a CEO of a brand that, quite frankly, he might not care about. But you turn it into good business. And what is good business today? And I think we all know. Companies, amazing companies, have made one mistake. Goodbye. You make a bad PR move, that could take years if you ever do overcome it. There are also human beings in brands. And there are people going through the same issues and have the same things that they're looking at that all we are as we're trying to communicate these marketing initiatives that means something more than just selling something. And I think that's what a lot of us have in common. So if we kind of approach it and not approach it from our point of view, but really, and some of the things I train people to do is that you have to put yourself, you have to know the personality, and you have to communicate. If you don't communicate and you don't know what their goals are, that's when deals don't get done. So you have to figure that out.
Yeah, and to expand on that, not only is it good for their bottom line, the businesses, to be more transparent, even apply for a B Corp, because once you're a B Corp, you go from C Corp to B Corp, then they know you're an ethical company. They know that you're treating your employees good. I mean, you have to go through this rigorous, I think it's every 2 years, and it takes almost like 6 months, this application, Q&A, interviews, to even get your status as a B Corp. And then once you're a B Corp, you don't get to keep it. You have to apply again in 2 years. And so that's a really great transparent way for companies to show that they are, one, ethical, sustainable, and they treat their employees really well. But the other side of that same coin is the team that works for this company. The millennials, the Gen Zs, the baby boomers, whoever's working for that company, demand it. Because if you start to demand it, then what happens is that the company has to start changing from within. And that's when real change begins. Because not only do they have to start changing to recruit better team members, but they're inspiring the people that are already working with them. So as much as we want to blame, the CEO of this company or that company, and granted, there needs to be change from the top down, but there can also be change from the bottom up.
And I've got a totally different twist on that answer. And my twist would be, I think in the end, we're all here to help others, but we also all have self-interest, right? And so I think it's really important to take a step back and say, what's in it for them? And I know for me, whenever I'm meeting anybody, going anywhere, speaking for anybody, I try to think about their individual pain point and how I can help them individually or collectively. And if you can figure that out, then you will have a commitment right from the start that will be from the heart. And when it's from the heart, it's usually pretty darn sustainable. And I've done crazy things like if I'm going to meet with somebody, I'll Google them. If I know anybody who knows them on LinkedIn, I'll try to find out as much as I possibly can. And even if it's just a hobby I have in common with them or something crazy and strange, I'll try to make sure to lead with that. Because once people connect with you and they're leading from the heart, then it gets really, really easy.
And we're going to get to your question in 2 seconds. I just had to jump on that. One of the things that is very effective is finding out somebody's pain, finding out where their ideal scenario is, and then in the middle is the motivation. You can't create the motivation, but you can uncover the motivation. It might not be the motivation that you have in mind, but there is motivation to do something there. It's up to you to uncover it and create the urgency. And that's part of the process. And if we're not doing that, the communication, which I think is at the center of everything that we do in here, really breaks down and nothing gets done. And so I know you've been waiting patiently.
That's okay. No. So you mentioned about branding and brands are human beings. I'm bringing this up because this is a marketing and branding, and you talked about how sometimes change needs to be done from the bottom up. What I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you gentlemen, you represented your organization and what you do, and I heard you mention minority. What is a minority?
A minority to us is anyone that is coming from a disadvantaged background. Maybe their businesses got closed during the pandemic because they were brick and mortar mom and pop shops. How many of those out there do you people know that ended up closing? Okay, maybe they were, a small department store or hardware store, and they had to close. Brick and mortar had to close, but Amazon stayed open. So the competition, they couldn't keep up with the competition. They were not able to make that transition from pre-pandemic to what are we going to do during the pandemic to stay afloat, and they collapsed. And so what we're trying to do is take those people, whoever they are, and help them reestablish themselves, maybe in a whole different career field. Maybe they got a whole different idea that they want to start with or want to try.
So you've created your own brand of the definition of minority within the context of your organization? Is that
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
That's
Because
what we did.
Historically, minority had been used to refer to melanated black people. And the reason why I said about branding and humans is we are not minority. We've never been a minority. We don't want to be, I don't want to be called a minority. Many people don't want to be called a minority.
I can't stand the word.
If you can help us in branding and marketing, especially NGOs that go out there and say, minority, we are majestic. We're not minority. So we can change that branding, then the reason why that's important is because, and I'm glad you did that. I like the approach you took. You saying, hey, we have our own, this is what
we have our own definition.
Which is different from the mainstream definition. So, like, for example, when we had to change how we marketed ourselves. And when we changed that, and we stopped calling ourselves minority, we had a lot more success.
I would say, and I said, I stand by it. I can't stand the word. I don't use it. I think it's ancient. And I think we're progressive and we're moving forward. I do think that there are people out there that are not given the advantages or equal advantages.
Yes, that's where we're coming from.
Because of whatever circumstance, because of the way they look,
Yep.
because of whatever. So I don't like that word because immediately it's got negative connotations and it puts you in a class that is just, it's not deserving. And that's the whole thing. What is important is and I think everybody here agrees, leveling out the playing field. If we're not leveling out the playing field, then people are working at a disadvantage. That constitutes a minority. But I hate classifying anybody as a minority because we're in a world now where like everyone is equal. And we're trying to get to that place. We're never going to get to that place where it's 100%.
Yeah,
the
but you
overall
mentioned that
acceptable-
constitutes a minority. So it's hard for us, but it doesn't constitute a minority, it constitutes a disadvantaged
Minority,
situation.
not describing the person,
Yeah.
not describing the person, the situation.
Yeah.
Everybody has got to be on the same playing field.
Yes.
But
So-
again, if you're not, there's, maybe that's not the right word. I don't like to classify. When I talk about the STEM education, and I've been interviewed on media, I've given conferences and speeches, I never use that word. Because it doesn't make sense. Why am I classifying anybody and giving the impression that they're less than anybody else in the room? And that is a disservice. And that makes it 20 times harder for those people to kind of get things done.
And
Because
it's okay to distinguish.
You're labeled on it.
Yeah, but think about the label, and sometimes engage with those people in those communities. What do they call themselves? How would they like to be addressed? And then that, can help. And I only just meant to thank you so much because it's a marketing conference, and it's a great time to bring up that brand. Maybe it's a challenge for everyone in marketing, especially NGOs. From today forward, please consider how you classify the people that you serve. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good comment.
Just to tail on that a little bit, one thing that you have to do, and now we have the ability to do once again, is to go out and meet people. Go ask them, what are your pain points? What do you need help with? And that's something that the Polk Institute believes in. I mean, we talk to people all the time, trying to find out what we can do to help them, what we can do to improve their situation, and we tailor our curriculum basically around that so we can teach them to be fundable CEOs, get out there, start their business, and hire other people. That's what we're all about.
So I think if we can just take one more question, we got 30 seconds, but you could take 35.
And counting.
Come on up.
Hi, guys. I think I haven't mentioned this before, but I think this is a great conference. So thank you all for your input. I've just heard, in the first session, it was said that to connect with NPOs, that's to engage with NPOs, that's important. That can give a lot of advantage, and also to tell a story. And how can we are from a bank from 85 years old, a little bit old school. We're now in a transition to do a restyling. How can we tell our story? That it can touches people and that we can retain our brand value. When you said that storytelling, I was thinking, how can we do that? But maybe you guys have some tips.
I, for a long time, worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they had such a horrible reputation as being your parents' health insurance, and they were old-fashioned. And so what we did is we really circled in on a much younger group of people within our existing clientele, and we had focus groups with them and asked them how we valued them, or how they valued us, excuse me. And the answers that we got back were the stories that we started to tell the community. And so all of a sudden, it wasn't about your grandparents' health insurance, but it was about, a young couple, or it was about a family starting out. And that really, really helped to change the paradigm.
That's a great one, thank you.
Yeah.
Because
sorry.
recently,
Sorry,
please.
my bad.
No, it's okay. Recently we did a customer research, and we're also we're doing a market research now. And I think that's a great one. So we can use that input to tell stories, yes.
I would love to keep going on, but I'm getting this, and
Oh,
that's dangerous. I'm
okay.
scared. Somebody in the back room. So, I guess that's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much. I love the questions. I love the interaction. I think that we had a great panel up here. Some really
Thank
good
you all.
people. Thank you so much.